Crime is everywhere and constantly on the rise. Quick and easy cases are solved daily, but what about those more sinister and cold cases that remain to be solved? Join Ashley Moreno as she dives into the horror of some of these cases and sheds some light on what is truly behind the realm of darkness. Here is your host, Ashley Moreno.
Hey everyone, welcome to Realm of Darkness. Tonight, you guys have seen her before. I have my good friend Katie Peak on, and we are going to be talking a little bit more of a more difficult, hard story, but something that is true to your heart and something that kind of changed your life, and it's a true story. So let's just kind of dive into it. Tell me about Anson.
Well, I happen to have his picture right here. This is my brother, and just so that everyone knows, I love this picture. And the best part is he's holding my son, who is like 3 months old in that picture, and he just adored him. But Anson technically was my brother-in-law, and even though his brother and I didn't work out, Anson still continued to be my favorite human. I will never consider him or any of those kids less than my brothers and sisters. Like, I remember first meeting the family, and so he was one of 6, and he was the oldest of 6. So the 2 little ones were 4 and 5 when I met them. So it was, I grew up with them essentially. And Anson and I kind of always were goofy and funny and did stupid things. And the day my son was born, he in the hospital said to me, "This is the greatest gift I'll ever have." And I was like, come on, like, you're fine. You'll have kids someday. And he looks at me, he's like, "No, I won't." He's like, if I make it to 30, I'll be shocked. And I kind of sat back and was like, why would you say a dumb thing like that? Like, this is absolutely insane. So when he passed, that always kind of stuck with me. But I decided when he passed that I would continue his legacy, and I would continue to tell his story and make sure that he wasn't forgotten, and honor him in the only way that I know how. And that has kind of been the mission of the family and been the mission of a lot of us. We've all done DWI advocacy. In 2006, I'll tell the whole backstory. In 2006, he was killed by a drunk driver. He was actually the passenger in the vehicle. He thought his friend was sober and asked him for a ride home, essentially. And they were about a quarter of a mile from his mom's house. You could literally, like, straight through the trees down the road. He would have been home in less than 45 seconds had this not happened. And it was in February. So little windy road, went over some train tracks. When they went over the tracks, they went airborne. The car spun, hit a tree, split in half. Where it split was on the, I guess the pyre or whatever it is. And the car, when it split in half, it was on his side. So he was killed instantly. The engine had gone through the car and severed his legs. So a lot of the videos that they showed or the pictures were of his legs on, outside of the vehicle, unfortunately, which was not great, when you're trying to explain to family what happened and trying to keep the shock value down. And at that time, this was 4:30 in the morning. So we were scrambling to even get family home. One sister was in Plattsburgh at college. One was 15 when it happened. One was 14. I actually found out by my brother Bradley literally showing up at the base of my bed. We had a window that never really locked. So he unlocked it, like yanked it open, climbed through, and just ran through the house. And I just remember waking up and hearing this gasping. And I just remember seeing him at the end of the bed. And all I remember is Anson, accident, dead. Those are the only 3 things. And I remember seeing his mouth moving. But I just stood there going, what are you talking? Like, what are you saying? And his girlfriend at the time, who's now his wife, was like, there's been an accident and Anson's died. And I kind of went, nah, he's fine. Like, all right, well, I'll get ready. I woke up his brother. I woke up Nicholas, who was laying next to me. And I was like, come on, let's just go to the house. It'll be fine. Like, he's not, I thought maybe he's on a respirator. I had no idea. And I got to the house and we pulled in. And I just remember seeing my ex-husband walk in the house and then drop to his knees and aunts, uncles, family just completely in hysterics. And it wasn't until I had seen my father-in-law at the time, completely like stone faced and then burst into tears that I was like, wow, this is real. Like this is actually happening. And at some point I remember like driving Nicholas to my parents' house and then driving from my parents back to my house. Cause I was in like my pajamas. I just jumped up and ran. Like I had like shorts and a t-shirt on. And, I remember crying at a stoplight and a cop pulled me over and was like, what are you doing? Like, are you okay? And I said, no, my brother was just killed in an accident. And he went, the one on Lincoln? And I went, yeah. And he goes, okay, I'm going to follow you home. And I said, okay, like, that's fine. So we drove another like mile and a half down the road. He pulled in and he actually blocked my driveway and was like, yeah, you're not leaving until like you calm down. And I was like, well, okay. So I sucked it up and I composed myself enough to be able to then have him pull down the driveway. And he kind of took a left, but I didn't realize he kind of like circled and was sitting at the end of another driveway. And I went flying out the right and he started chasing me. And I was like, I'm not going to stop. Like, I'm just going to keep going. And I pulled in the driveway and I jumped out and I looked at him and I'm like, said, I'm fine. Like, you can go. And he drove away.
Aww.
But I don't remember. It's sad because I don't remember bits and pieces. And I just like, even to this day, it's been 17 years and you're still like, what happened in this moment? What happened here? Like filling in the blanks of the story. But shortly after it had happened, we had decided that we were going to start advocating and we were going to start talking about the story to try to help people. And through all this, you know, we were there for the other family. You know, the young man that had taken Anson's life, Tommy, again, was a friend. We went and visited him in the hospital. We were trying to be supportive. We had no idea at the time that he was drunk or high. We just thought it was a horrible accident. So, you know, at the time we weren't going to press charges. We weren't going to do anything because again, we're thinking it's just an accident. And then bits and pieces started to come out and the police started giving us more and more information and telling us like he blew, I think it was like a 0.18. He was high on coke. He was a mess. And we said, okay, what's like the bare minimum that we can do? Like maybe we can help. Maybe we can do something to help turn a path. And, you know, it was kind of, okay, well, we can do this. Well, we can try this. And part of it was they were both underage. So don't drink and drive. Don't, stay sober. And that August or July, I want to say, there's something called Alive at 5. So it's this big pavilion. Everybody goes, there's bands, party buses, all of that. So it was my ex, our father-in-law, my brother Bradley, and I want to say there was one other person. And we were walking through this park and we see him with a beer in his hand in the beer tent. And we just all looked at each other like, you're seeing this, right? Like this isn't a mirage. We're all seeing it. And
the one who was driving.
Yeah. Yep. So he was standing in the beer tent with a beer in his hand. And we walked up to him and he kind of like looked at us like, not, oh, I got caught, but like, and like, what?
Did he ever apologize to your family?
No, he apologized basically for getting caught, for being in jail, for going to prison. But it was more of I'm sorry this happened to me. I'm sorry, my life is basically ruined. And it's like, but you get to go home. You get to spend holidays with your family. I found out later he has a child. It's like, you get to wake up every day and see your daughter. This is what I have left.
Yeah.
Like I get this one photo that sits in my son's room next to his mom's ashes. And I have friends that tell stories, none of the stories that my son knows are anything of his experience. They're all stories that we've told him. Like, this picture was done at a baseball game down at that kind of Alive at 5. It was another pavilion thing where we're all sitting and Nick and him were sitting, he wanted to hold the baby and that's what he did. He loved his nephew to death. He would have done anything and everything. And it drove me crazy, but it also made me proud that this kid who didn't really know his way and was still trying to figure out his path was so in love with this child. He used to take him to the mall and people would be like, oh, is that your son? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, dude, people are going to I'm your sister-in-law. Like, you can't be saying it. He's like, it's fine. I tell them after the fact. Girls all the time. We're over to the house. I'm like, where's the kid? You know, his friends, to this day, I see his friends all the time. They come into the restaurant I work in. I see them on Facebook. You know, we all still talk and communicate. And he bonded us in a way that I never thought would happen.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm so grateful for. I'm so grateful that I'm still friends with these kids. But again, they all don't know their Uncle Anson. None of them have any clue who this young man was and how much he would have adored them and all the fun experiences. And yeah, he was a pain in the butt. Yeah, he made bad choices at times.
But what 20-year-old boy doesn't?
Right.
Or I should say, what 20-year-old doesn't?
Yeah,
I mean, I didn't.
The bad decisions I made at 20, and
yeah. Well, and that's one of the reasons that I wanted you to come on the show and tell Anson's story, because, you know, people are going to look and say, well, he shouldn't have been drinking underage. And my dad's probably watching. I got drunk in bars at 20 years old. I mean, I'm not going to say everybody because I'm not going to talk for everyone, but most people are drinking at 20, if not younger, you know, and he made that conscious decision to ask someone who he trusted if he could get a ride home. And I know in private conversations, you have told me that they were friends for years.
Yeah.
And I would hope that if I was in a situation where I needed a ride home, I didn't feel like I could drive, I was too drunk, asking a friend to take me home, I would trust that friend would either say, yeah, I'm good, I can take you home, or you know what, I'm drunk too, let me call a taxi, let me call an Uber, whatever. But the fact that he did not do that, it baffles me, because you're not invincible.
And I think too, that's part of the reason I have a hard time forgiving. And I know a lot of the family in certain ways has forgiven, and in other ways hasn't. And that's what bothers me, is that this was one of those first times that Anson didn't reach out and call for that help because he thought he had it. Like, usually we'd get those phone calls of like, hey, come get me, you know, or hey, meet me out. Like, and then we'd take him home, or he'd crash at a friend's house or whatever. And this was, again, one of those times that he didn't pick up that phone. And I will say, my son's 19, and we've had to have those hard conversations. And I've had the age appropriate conversations. You have the conversations at 5 and at 10 and at 15. And at 19, you know, right now he's in Ocean City with his friends and he's having a great time. But I also said, don't be dumb. You know, I call somebody. Like, I have a couple friends down in the area, and I've already texted them and said, hey, I've given Nick your number. If something happens, just, can you back me? Can you help me? And even after he passed, I can't tell you how many times friends would text me or call me and say, hey, you know what, we're drunk, can you come get us? Yep. And I did. I packed my little baby in the car. You know, Nick at that time was 3 or 4. I didn't care. If I knew that they were going to get home safely, I'm going to drag my kid out. And they always apologized and said, you know, we know, you know, we know, we're sorry, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, guys, you're safe in my car.
Right.
I now can go home. I can put my child back to bed, and I know every single one of you is safe. I don't have to worry about getting that phone call. And that's, again, the one thing that I've talked to Nick about. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to do stupid things. But you know what? I would rather you call me, and I'd rather be mad at you for a day, a week, a month, than to have to pick out your last outfit, to have to pick out an urn, to make those phone calls. You know, the day that this happened, my mother-in-law handed me the family address book and the home phone, and was like, she didn't have to say anything. She just handed it to me. And I knew what that meant. I had to call her brother. I had to call cousins. You know, I had to make all of those hard conversational phone calls because she couldn't even speak. No. And I'm grateful that I was able to do that, and that she trusted me enough to do that. But also, I know what it's like to have to, you know, kind of be like, hey, what's going on? This is going to take a very different turn. Like,
right.
You know, those are the hard ones. And to hear that jovial happiness of hearing someone's voice to, I'm sorry, what did you just say? Who? Like, and again, people think you're pranking them. They think you're joking. And it's like, yeah, this isn't something I joke about.
Right. And that's, you know, I think that that's the brain's way of kind of almost like a coping mechanism. You know, at first you're kind of like, no, that's not what I heard. What did you say? And because I know I received a phone call that someone had passed before. And after I got off the phone, I literally called them back and I was like, I just want to make sure I heard you right, because did I hear you right? And they're like, no, you did. And after I hung up, I'm like, who, what? And it takes a minute for it to register. And like I said with Anson, he tried to do the right thing, and he tried to make the right decision, and still ended up in, this situation. And it's devastating, because growing up, parents are always, if you get drunk, find someone safe to get a ride home from, call someone you trust, don't drive. But your story now shows that you have to take responsibility for being drunk or high or whatever it is. But now you also have to think about the person you're asking. You can't just trust them and say, hey, I'm not okay to get behind the wheel. Can you take me home? Now you have to be like, are you okay? Like, are you sure? You look me in the eyes and tell me you're okay.
And think about it. After
it's a scary situation.
Yeah. Yep. And and that's the hard part is, you want to have faith in humanity. You want to have faith in the people. You want to trust everyone. And even to this day, like, I can't tell you the last time I got drunk. Listen, we've all had the good time. We've all had the couple drinks, but I can honestly say, I think the last time I got drunk was probably 2008, 2009. And it was going through a divorce. I remember drinking 2 or 3 bottles of wine, being absolutely miserable. And I remember walking into the bathroom, washing my hands and looking up in the mirror and not recognizing my own face. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. And then moving into my own apartment and having this little boy sleeping upstairs and thinking, if I drink and I get drunk and this kid falls, I can't help him. I can't take him to the emergency room. If I have to call an ambulance, if I have to call 911 and they say, well, take him. And I have to say, well, I'm drunk and I'm an idiot right now. Like, come help me. I think of all those repercussions and what that could happen. Even just having those 2 drinks at dinner, you have the one, you're eating dinner, you feel good. And you're like, I'll have another. And you think you're going to be there for another hour. And you realize you're there for 20 minutes. Now it's you, it's your husband, it's your child, it's, whatever. And it's like, then everybody on the road. So it's not, this is one of those times that's like, it's okay to be selfish and say, you know what, I'm going to have water. Yeah. I would love to sit here and have a beer with you. I would love to sit and have a drink, but you know what? I want to go home to my kid. And
and one of the things too is like, it's almost a double-edged sword, because there are some people that can go to dinner and have 2 drinks and be fine. But again, you're now having to trust everybody on the road, because if that person hits you and they're fine and you have alcohol in your system, now you're instantly going to be to blame.
And the thing that people don't understand is that a simple fender bender, we've all rolled the car at a stoplight. We've all rolled the stop sign. A simple exchange now between a police officer and you. Hey, you know what? You ran the stop sign, blah, blah, blah. Let me give you a ticket. Turns into, hey, I smell alcohol. Hey, now this. Right. So a simple $150 fine in a day at court turns into ... And then you have the opposite of, you have people that do this bad stuff and get a slap on the wrist just to do it again and again and again. And it's like, at what point do you say enough's enough? And, we had a lot of the laws in at least our area changed because of this, and a lot stricter penalties. And, you see on Facebook, people talk about the blankets and talk about this. And it's like, I get it. I get why people are like, hey, watch out, this highway, there's all these cops, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, cool. I hope that's not your family member that now gets injured because you've told this drunk idiot not to get on the highway. Maybe allowing that drunk idiot to get on the highway and get pulled over might save your child's life, or your grandmother, or, your husband. Like, for me, it's listen, I drink, I have fun, I party, I do all those things, but I'm also not an idiot. I know my limitation. I will happily say, hey, either come get me, or, hey, you know what? I'm spending the night at so-and-so's house, even if I'm unprepared. I'd rather wear the same outfit to work 2 days in a row and say, you know what? I didn't go home because I got drunk and I didn't want to make a bad decision, and have that in my conscience and maybe get made fun of at work for wearing the same outfit than to kill someone or to do something stupid or crash my car. Like, there's all of these things that can happen that I don't think people really think about, because you've gotten away with it. We've all gotten in the car. We've all drank. We've all gotten in the driveway and went, how'd I get home? How did this happen? But my goal is to prevent one family or make that kid put down that alcohol. And that's the thing. I hope that when my son maybe makes a bad decision, or maybe he says, you know what, I might have made that decision, but I didn't because of this. This is one of those times that I kind of do wish he was here to say, this is my experience and this is what I witnessed. And I don't, again, I have just pictures and stories, and, he's been part of this advocacy. And another kind of interesting story. So there's this place here called the Beacon of Hope, and it's for DWI advocates. It's for people of distracted driving. So they have pictures on the walls of different accidents, which Ansons are there and with our family's permission. And he had brought home, I think he was like 15 or 16, and he had brought home this thing from health class. It was like, we're going to the Beacon of Hope, and we're doing this thing because prom season is coming and this and that. And I emailed the health teacher and said, hey, can we talk about this? I'd love to be a chaperone, but 2, there's a little bit more family history at this place, and I'd like to talk to you about it. So his health teacher calls me, and I said, listen, here's what's going on. Here's what's happening. His uncle's pictures of him dead in the car are in the Beacon of Hope. And I said, he's never seen them. And I don't want his first encounter with them to not have a parent present, to not have someone there that completely understands the story. And he was like, you know what? I want you there. He goes, there's no way you're not going now. So I sat in the back of the room. And when we first walked in, Nick immediately looks straight at the photos. It was like he knew exactly who it was. I had never, and again, he had never seen the car. He knew the tree, but at that time the car's wrapped around it. So it doesn't look as pretty, memorial that it is now. And he just stood there stone-faced staring at it. And I gave him, a minute or so. And then I walked up behind him and I said, you okay? And he goes, I don't even know what to feel right now. He goes, this is what my last memory was. And I said, well, this is why we never showed you. And I said, but I need you to understand that if this scares you enough, again, to not make a bad decision, sadly, I'm okay with it. No. And that day, I actually got roped into giving a speech, and I had never spoken in front of a crowd like this. This is 15, 16-year-old kids. These are my son's peers. So I, said, does anyone in this whole room have any pictures here? And at the time, too, none of the kids knew. So, photo bomber. I said, does anyone here recognize anyone in these photos? Is there anyone here that has a family member? And my son raised his hand, and they all turn around and they're like, what's going on? And I then explained the whole story, told everyone. And I said, here's my goal, guys. When you make a bad decision, or when you go to make a bad decision, remember that one raised hand. You don't ever want to be that. You don't ever want to be part of that club of a sibling, an uncle. I said, it's not a club that's fun. It's not like Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts where you welcome new members. I don't ever want to welcome another member into the lost sibling club. And it's
and you don't want to put somebody in that club either. Right. And, I remember the first time you showed me those pictures.
Yeah. It's terrifying. It's not, I would much rather have this in my head as my last memory. And even in the casket, I remember walking up and, trying to kind of weirdly give a hug or give a kiss. Like I remember, kissing the forehead and just the ice cold. And then I just remember kind of like, he had a striped shirt on. It was a black and white striped shirt. And I remember being annoyed at that point that one of the stripes wasn't straight. And I'm trying to fix it. And I was fixated in this moment of trying to get this straight. And I just remember being like, why do his arms feel round? He had these big muscular arms. Why do they feel like PVC pipe? What? And I remember walking out to the lobby and I was like, hey, can you tell me why my brother's arms feel like PVC pipe? And the one caretaker looks at me and goes,
well, that was really odd. I don't know where she went in that situation. I think she might have froze or her phone went out. I'll kind of try to fill in a little bit while she's kind of reconnecting. I don't know how many people out there have ever really lost anybody in a situation that was a little bit more traumatizing like that, and a little bit more, I hate to say the word violent, but a little bit more violent. When you do decide to have an open casket after there has been trauma or damage to the body, they do use PVC pipe to kind of build it back up. There is, sorry, I don't know what happened, Katie, but I was filling them back in.
My sister called to wish me a happy birthday.
Oh,
Oh my God.
But when there is trauma to a body in that type of situation, they do use PVC pipe, they use netting, they use different materials to build the body back up to make it look as normal as possible for the people viewing it.
Yep. It's more to get rid of that shock value for people. But again, so they said that it's because it was, and I went, oh, okay. And I kind of just walked away. Like it didn't register what they just said, or that it confirmed it. But I kind of went back and was like, okay, I guess this is what it is. And again, that one photo that I showed you is shocking enough, but he's still clothed, and he's still, so when you get down into the nitty gritty of the worst pictures, which terrifyingly enough, there's worse ones than that one. You start to see the damage, and you think you hit a tree at 40, 50 miles an hour, like nothing's going to be really in place anymore. And that's the terrifying part. And those age appropriate statements to my son of like, hey, it's not just like bumping a car. It's not, we've all seen a car accident. We've all seen that, but it's like the body can heal from trauma, and then the body can't heal. And those, again, were those questions of like, well, mommy, why couldn't a doctor bring him back? Well, mommy, why couldn't this? And it's like, but even if they could have brought him back, I don't know how he would have been. I don't know. Would he have had brain damage? Would he have been a vegetable? Would he have been?
Would he have wanted to come back?
And that's the hardest.
That's the problem.
Is that those are those questions. Like, as much as you want someone here, I don't know. And
you have to think about them.
Yeah. And it's even that mortality to myself. Like when I first met my boyfriend, we'd had this conversation. He knew my brother. They all went to school together. And I said, please don't ever I don't want ventilators. I don't want to be kept alive. And I said, don't keep me here for you. Right. Like, you have to let me go. You have to let me be part of another realm, because I can't watch you go through, and I can't let you change your life. Yeah, you could take care of me in a bed. I could be a vegetable. You could flip me every day and change my diapers and do all, but I don't want you to not have a quality of life because you think I need to be here. And I've had that very hard conversation with my parents and my sisters and aunts and uncles. And I have said, don't keep me alive. If it's not something that is an easy fix, like taking the arm off, I don't want it. And I never thought I would have those conversations until seeing the trauma and seeing what it can do to family. Right. And it's awful.
Well, and one of the things, and you haven't mentioned it yet, and you can jump right over it if you don't want to talk about it. But one of the things when we were talking about your story originally, it was just me and you in the kitchen at Wildwood. And again, Wildwood is another, healing and things like that. But when you told me that the news had taken that one picture and had it plastered all over before some of the family even knew what happened, I was so angered because of what that picture was. Yeah. And, I did mention in the post about this thing that we were talking about showing the pictures, and because it brings a whole new realization, and it brings a whole new shock factor of, oh my God, this happened to somebody I know. But at the same time, they are extremely hard to look at. And I didn't know how it was going to be received. And I wanted to keep this all in somewhat of a positive light, like what happened to him was absolutely terrible. And he was too young and all of that. But you are taking this tragedy and this trauma and you're turning it into something kind of good. I want to say you're turning it. You're turning it into good. You're making good out of a really, really awful situation. Yeah. And that's what I kind of wanted, you know, and I didn't want some people, you know, rubbernecking and would just look at the pictures for interest and all of that. But that one picture that the news took, I was so upset about it. And
because their
how did you
job
keep
as
the family together with that?
we didn't. People were really angry, and we did lash out at the media. And even the day that it happened, so this happened again, it was like 4:30 in the morning. By 8 o'clock, we had all the family together. I think by, I want to say 9:30, the first camera crew was banging on the front door, and our grandmother, Kay, God bless her, opened the door. And this woman stuck this microphone in her face and essentially was like, how's the family? How do you feel? Blah, blah, blah. And she's like,
How do you think?
Yeah. She's like, we're devastated. This isn't okay. And we get that you want a story, but remember, this was a human being. This isn't a story for us. This is someone's life. And that's the part that when we do the advocacy and when we do this stuff that we try very hard to say, you know, yeah, there's shock value, you know, yes, there's those photos, you know, you can go to Facebook, you can go to, there's an In Memory of Anson Breen page. There's, I think the Choices 301 page is still up. You can even Google Beacon of Hope. All those photos are up there. You know, it's nothing that isn't public knowledge. We've used some of that stuff to try to advocate and try to show people this happens. You know, we did this, it was a display of, you know, almost like giant plywood. And we nailed, I think it was like 100 and something or 300. I can't even remember the number. It was astronomical. The amount of shoes, literal shoes that we had nailed to this board. And each one represented a certain amount at that time. I think, you know, it was like 2008 to 2010 or something. I wish I had all the numbers in front of me. I do apologize. But each one represented a certain amount of people and a certain amount of families that had lost someone. So when you see 300 or 400 shoes nailed to a board, that's overwhelming. And it's something you can touch, you know, you can put your hands. And that was the thing. We took the shoes that he was wearing that night, and those were that was when you walked up, they were on display next to his picture with a book that had all the information in it. And you could split through. It was a very orchestrated way of showing people, not just pictures. We wanted something tangible to show people the amount of damage one bad decision can have.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was another thing, was having those shoes next to that horrific picture. And then I want to say it was his like 9th or 10th grade school photo that was next to it in a frame. And it was like, this is what we have left. You know, and even clothing and things like that. Like my son in his closet has 2 shirts, and we have a couple, like an oil and vinegar bottle. We have a couple things from the kitchen. Like, this is a 20-year-old kid. Think about the possessions you have now versus what you had at 20 years old. Think about those things that you had as a kid. You know, his mom had this little bunny that was on his Easter basket, or that was on, no, it wasn't his Easter basket. I think it was on the crib the day he was born. You know, you think about photos, like even when we were talking, you're like, you know, send me photos, send me this. And it's like, oh my God, like we don't have, or at least I don't have a ton of that stuff. And
well, I mean, 17 years ago though, you know,
we're different.
We didn't have iPhones. Right. We didn't, you know, that was still when you had to like wind the camera up and go get it developed. We didn't have, I just don't think people took pictures the way they do now because it's just not as readily available. And, you know, I've lost family members and going to look for pictures, you're like, I swear I've had more than this. And you're right. Just, you know, some of the things that you guys are going to hold on to because of that situation. And, you know, it sucks. It really, really does.
So again, this is where I say to people, have those moments. Don't, you know, tell people every day, you know, I love you. I care about you. I know, like we do it, you know, we'll text and we'll be like, love you, talk to you later, blah, blah, blah. Like, do those things. Tell people you appreciate them. Tell them, you know what, you look great in that shirt today. Hey, you know what, I went and bought the same one. Or, hey, you know what, I tried this out today because I saw you post about it. Like, tell the people now that you care about them, that you appreciate them. Because again, going into our paranormal stuff, I don't want to wait to do it with a pair of dowsing rods. I don't want to do it in a spirit box. I want to look you in the face and tell you, you're important to me. I trust you. I love you. You're my sister. do all of those things. You know, we all fight with our siblings. We all argue with them. We all argue with our parents. And even, you know, doing more talking about this. I've tried to mend certain relationships with people or learn a healthy boundary and say, you know what, I can hang out with you. We're never going to be huggy kissy. We're never going to be super friendly. But you know what? I can come and do this. I can talk to you about this. And don't wait.
Yeah.
You know?
And, you know, at the same time, you know, because I do that with you, you know, like we've met through paranormal and we became very close very quickly. But at the same time, I do keep my circle kind of small because it's hard to find people that truly have your best interests at heart. And I know that if I was in a situation where, you know, just kind of like Anson was, if I was drunk and I looked at you and you were drunk and I said, Katie, can you take me home? I fully know that you're going to be like, I can't drive, but let's split an Uber, you know, something like that. But not everybody has that. And, you know,
Fear is a factor in that.
Yeah. And the fact
people feel like I'm an adult. I should be able to hold my liquor. I should be able to. And it's like, no,
there's no shame.
Right. We
well,
all
and here's the thing. If you can't handle your liquor, then you're a cheap date and that's easy. Like, I mean, easy as in like less money, not easy in that type of situation. But
not if that's what she said.
Yeah, not that type of easy. It's like like $20 easy.
Yep.
But you know, and again, like his friend, they had known each other for years. And then the fact that he didn't even reach out to you guys to apologize. And now in my understanding, he did do some time for this, correct?
Yeah. So we
not clearly enough, but
no. So New York State, I think it was 2.5 to 7. After 2.5, we went back to court. And, you know, we all initially did our victim impact statements. We did all of that. And the judge had said, you know, you've had time to reflect. And did you do the court mandated thing? So I think at one point he was supposed to take like classes in jail for, you know, like kind of therapy classes. He was supposed to take like AA, certain things like that. And he looked at the judge and was like, no. And he's like, well, why? And he's like, because I can't drink in prison. I can't drink in jail. And it was like, yeah, but this is part of what you need to do to like stay sober when you do get out and to rehabilitate yourself and change your life. And he basically was like, okay.
So he didn't take the alcohol classes because
Correct.
He can't drink
in prison. And at that time, that was his reasoning. So
I'm just going to stop from what I was going to say.
So the judge was like, great, sit. And now you can do the full 7. So after 7, that was what at the time New York State allowed. So he got out.
So he was 27, 28 when he got out?
Yep.
So still a baby.
Yep. Still plenty of life to lead and does. And I will say it was weird. One day I was flipping through Facebook. I think I actually texted you this. I was flipping through Facebook and the people you may know, and his face popped up. And the last time I had seen him was the day that he was sentenced. So he had a shaved head because he had gashes that they had to suture. He was in an orange jumpsuit, and I couldn't even tell you what the picture looked like that I saw, but I immediately went, delete. Nope. Not even happening. I want nothing to do with it. Because my first thought was, maybe I'll reach out. Maybe if I talk to him, I can get some closure. I can move forward. And then I thought, you know what? I don't need any of that, because even if he said I'm a horrible person and I'm sorry and I was wrong, it still doesn't bring him back. It still doesn't change anything. And cool. I'm glad that you've changed. You know what? Be there for your kid. Be there for your parents. Don't do this again. I hope the best. I do. I can't forgive, but I hope the best. I hope you've changed who you are. I hope you live a life that you love. Just keep it away from me. And I wish, weirdly enough, I wish I could forgive him. I've forgiven a lot. I've forgiven my ex. I've forgiven a lot of people in my life. This is one of those things, because it's like, it's not just about what he took. It's about all of the future things that are missed out on, you know, and that's the thing in memory page, that's the common thing that people write. You've missed nieces and nephews' birthdays. You've missed weddings. You've missed anniversaries. You've missed the death of your mom. You know, she kind of gave up. She had cancer. She she stopped living the day that he passed. And that was another heartbreaking thing, is that this woman mourned every day. You know, she felt fear in having joy in her life because she felt like if she was happy, somehow it did him a disservice. And there was nothing I could say to fix that. And I remember at one point saying, like, you have to move forward. Like, it's going to come out wrong, but it's like, you have to push forward. You have to continue moving forward. You don't move on. You never, ever, I don't ever want anyone to think you move on. You don't. You know what you do? You learn
to deal with it.
And after. Mm-hmm. You learn how to cope. And you have good days, you have bad days. You have a good holiday, you have a crappy holiday.
Right.
An anniversary comes and you have a great experience. And sometimes it's like, hey, you know what? We're all going to raise a toast and we're going to get a cupcake. And there's other days that it's like, I can do everything just to put a post on Facebook. Like, you know, this year for his birthday, I went and got a donut and I put a candle in it and I sat it on the porch and I, you know, kind of just sat there and held it and watched the flame and talked to him. And there's other holidays that I'm like, I can't put up a stocking. I can't put up an ornament because I'm like, I don't want to do this year. Yeah. So you find a different balance. And there's always those before and afters. Like, I look at a date, you know, I watch a lot of true crime as you know, and you'll see like, you know, February 26, 2004. And I'll go, oh, he was still alive then. Or you'll see, you know, February 27th, 2015. And I'll go, oh, he'd been dead for X amount of years at that point. Like, you find these before and afters. You learn a different way, but you have to keep it alive. And, you know, like, my little sister Chelsea and I will, you know, kind of text each other, love you, or, you know, we'll see a memory post and like, hey, do you remember this? But it's hard. And there's certain family members, we still can't talk about it, you know. And that was another hard thing with his mom, was it was hard to speak his name because it brought up so much pain. But again, as we know, going through paranormal, the only way to keep that energy going is to tell their stories. Yeah. So when that little boy would ask me, Mommy, tell me a story about Uncle Anson, or I meet someone and I say, Nick, you know, this was Uncle Anson's, you know, best friend, Jason. Yeah. And he'd be like, tell me a story. Tell me anything. Tell me anything you can. And it was like, you know, and they kind of look at me. I'm like, tell him the good one. You can tell him the bad stuff later. You know, when he's older. Beer wall in my basement or playing beer pong, you know, till 3 a.m. Like, tell him the age appropriate stories. And now that he's 19, it's becoming more fun to hear those. And you forget a lot. So it's nice to hear crazy friend versus crazy brother. So
it also helps keep, because, you know, as we get older, we start to forget things, we forget stories. So hearing stories from other people is also going to help you remember the good times and the happy times. And like, I'm going to point it out, just those few minutes of you talking about that, the smile on your face. You know, it's like things like that where it's like,
because you want to remember the good.
Yeah. Like, you went through this traumatic experience, you went through this tragedy, but then you have those memories that make you smile like you just did. And those are the things that you have to hold on to.
And there is still guilt to it. Like, you know, you're telling this story and we're telling this horrific thing, but it's like, not all of it, you know, again, it's like, did you have a bad day or did you have a bad moment? I had this was a bad moment that has lasted, but there's so much good, you know, there's so many good times and fun things. And, you know, John and I have started this new series and, you know, filming some things. So in one of the episodes, in one of the sequences that we did, I'm actually wearing his shirt. And I said it was important to me to put it on. And that shirt, funny enough, he had 2 shirts that night, the one that he died in and the one that I have. And they were very similar. It was like, you know, instead of more blue in the shirt, there was more orange. So to have that little piece and to be able to put it on. And I remember, again, my son, it was 7 days before his 2nd birthday. So this giant extra large polo shirt that my baby boy swam in, he can now wear. You know, it's still a little big, but he can wear it. And I can, you know, curl up in it and I can wear it. And it's like, even though I don't have him in it, I still have it. Yeah. And it does. I am laughing and I am smiling, but it's like, I can't be mad. I can't be sad all the time. Like, I get in the car, and it was another great thing. He didn't drive at the time. He had a car, but he didn't drive it. And, you know, I think he didn't have insurance. It was something. And I was like, you're not driving this car. So I would drive home after a very long day, and he'd be standing on my back porch with Nick, because he knew if Nick was with him, I couldn't swear and I couldn't yell at him. And he'd be standing there, and I
Smart guy.
Yep. And I go, let me guess, you need a ride. And he goes, yeah. And the whole way to work, I would just flip out. You need to get your license. You need to do this. You need to get insurance on that car. What are you doing? Like, you're 19 years old. What are you doing? And he would kiss me on the cheek, and he'd go, and I love you. And I'm like, oh, I love you too. Get out of my car.
Like,
and
I love you, but I just want to shake you.
And I would drive all the way home mad as hell. But I was like, you know what? I would give anything to have that one more time.
Yeah.
And kicker of all of it. So he worked for UPS as a shift supervisor. And we know the rivalry between FedEx and UPS, right?
Yeah.
Nicholas works for FedEx.
Could you imagine the conversations at dinner?
I remember he came home and he's like, Mom, I got a job. And I go, great, where are you working? He goes, FedEx. And I went, oh God. I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah. He's like, I got a job at FedEx as a shift supervisor. And I was like, okay.
Uncle Anson would kick your butt.
Yeah. And he's like, I said, great, what's the shift? He goes, 4:30 in the morning. And I'm like, you don't drive. What are you doing? What are you doing? I was like, this is karma. This is karma for everything that I said, and making fun of my mother-in-law for having to drive to work at 4:00 in the morning and this and that. And I was like, wow, talk about it. I said, they're up there going.
I bet Anson is just dying laughing. Oh, yeah. He's like, this is for all the times that you yelled at me in the car, told me to do 100%. This, told me to do that. Yep.
But I will say too, there's not a day that I don't get in my car that I look at the passenger seat and go, get in. You know, in my head, he's sitting next to me, and, you know, we're listening to Peter Gabriel. We're doing all the things, even on long adventures. Like when I came to visit you, I was like, come on, let's, like, you're my angel. Let's go. Like, get in the car. I need to get there safe and back.
Yeah.
So you do what you can, and you have those memories, but also Dave Schrader said it on a podcast once. Don't think of it as I have to do something. I get to. Yes. And that for me, I get to have those moments with my son. I got to have those moments with him. And even if it's a pain in the butt to get up at 4 a.m, and even if it's a pain to have pulled in the driveway and been like, oh, I'm so disappointed, but you know what? You're 19, 20 years old. You didn't know, like, at least you were asking for that ride to work. You weren't like, well, I don't have a ride. I'm calling in, or, oh, I'm just going to quit. Like, you did everything in your power to make sure that you could provide. And there were times, you know, I struggled. I didn't have money. We were barely pulling it together, and he would, you know, return bottles. He would buy groceries. He would do everything that little boy needed. If I was like, oh, you know, payday's not till this, I need $20 for, you know, diapers. I'd come home and there'd be a stack of diapers next to the cabinet. And it was like, he didn't have to do that, but he wanted to. And that's how much he loved that little boy. And those are the things that I hold on to. And, you know, when Nick makes a bad decision or does something, I go, Nick, what would your uncle say? Like, think of those. If you don't want to hear what would mom do, if you could call your uncle right now and be like, hey, I did this, da, da, da. Would he be proud of you? Or would he be like, dude, what the heck are you thinking? You know, it's like, these are those moments, and he's never far from our thoughts.
Yeah.
And again, it's keeping that memory alive. And if I can tell this story and I can impact one person, I've done it. If I can get one kid to change their mind, or even just to change a friend, like them telling the story of going to the Beacon of Hope in 10th grade or 11th grade or whatever it was, and telling, oh, you know, this kid in my class is uncle and blah, blah, blah. It's like, I've done it. I've done my job. And I think I even told you Tuesday, I get to the restaurant, and the gentleman who started Choices 301, Ed Frank, walks into the restaurant, and I literally looked and went, I was literally just thinking of you. And he goes, oh God, all good things? And I go, no, of course not. I go, all bad things. And I told him what I was doing, and he immediately teared up, and he said to me, he goes, thank you. Thank you for continuing this work. He goes, you know, I'm old. I can't do it anymore. He's like, it's painful. And he goes, but knowing you're continuing the torch, he goes, it's in good hands. And he goes, I know the family's proud. And I said, as long as you're proud and they're proud, I said, that's all that matters. And it's hard too, because again, yes, technically he's my brother-in-law. And it's like, do I have a right to tell this story? Do I have a right to teach people using that information? And it's like, you know what? That's my son's uncle. And if I can continue the torch, and I love these people enough to continue it, and it's no different than me telling, anyone's story. The new First 48, they tell everybody's story. So how is it any different than me telling it? And I feel like I have to tell it. I have to tell people, you know, don't make the bad decision. In 2018, I was stopped at a four-way intersection, and a kid texting on his phone slammed into my driver's door at 50 miles an hour. And had I not been in the vehicle that I was in, and I was in my little Civic hatch, or I was in the next year down from the CRV that I was in, the grill of his car would have snapped my neck, and we wouldn't be sitting here right now. And I bought the same car. It took me 3 more years to find the exact same car for that reason. I will continue to buy Hondas. I will continue to buy years that I love. And I think, again, had it not been the time, the day, all of it, I wouldn't be here to tell that story. My son was in the car with me. He might not have been in, you know, the position to tell that story. So my angel watched out for me. So the only thing that I can do is continue to watch out for him.
Yeah. Well, and I hate to have to say this, that we're coming to an end. We're coming to an end, but you know, your bravery, your strength, you know.
Now you're going to make me cry.
It's inspiring, you know, and just keeping his memory alive and saving families from a possible situation that you've been through is just, it's amazing. It's incredible. I love you. I'm sure everybody after this is going to love you. And everyone, this is my bestie, Katie. I hope you loved her. And, you know, I will see you guys next week. Katie, thank you so much for being on the show, sharing your story, and happy birthday. I love you.
No better way to spend it.
Good night, guys. I'll see you next week.
The truth is here and now on WLTK-DB Talk Radio at WLTK-DB.com.